Hello, everyone. Welcome to TETV's Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Show. I am Jennie Tuliao, and this week we are still celebrating API Heritage Month, and so we have some special guests, Johanna Atilano and Jill Killington. We will be talking about some really interesting things about our first generation experiences, loving horror and entertainment in general. But before we get started on that, I want to make sure that you guys are following us on social media. You know, we're everywhere here on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even Slack, YouTube, TikTok, all of that. So you can find all of that on our website for sure. Don't want to miss out on our amazing content. And yeah, I am a new face on here. This is my first time hosting a show for the Untitled. So again, I am Jennie Tuliao. I go by she, her, hers, and I identify as Filipino-American. I am one of the assistant producers and marketing specialists on TETV, but outside of that, I'm just like an undergraduate student studying communication and film at UCLA. I'm the external vice president at the TEA student org on campus. And then I'm also very involved with Haunt and the Haunt community. So I like to volunteer with Midsummer Scream. So shout out to them. And I'm also a project coordinator for the Upbeat Imagination Workshop. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. But let's hear from our guests, Jojo and Jill. And hello, everyone. We can just start with basic introductions. If anyone wants to start first and pass it on to the other person.
Yeah, Jojo.
Me first. Yeah. Fine. Hello, everyone. Thanks for TETV for having us, and thank you, Jenny. This is a really fun opportunity. My name is Johanna Atilano, or some call me JoJo. My background is in themed entertainment and producing, but add a little bit of horror as well. When I started in the entertainment industry, I worked on a website called Theme Park Adventure, which was really fun because it gave me a really awesome insider scoop on attractions and Halloween events. And I spent a lot of time taking pictures and doing a lot of photography and doing a lot of behind the scenes at different theme park events around the world. So that was really the start of my career. But professionally, I started a company called BRC Imagination Arts, which is really the start of my career in themed entertainment. And from there, it really kind of skyrocketed my career as a producer. In parallel, just because I love Halloween and I already kind of started dabbling into themed entertainment, I produced two fantastic Halloween conventions called Scare LA and Midsummer Scream. So that was such a great time, and really, I'm a huge fan of Halloween and horror. So that was my chance to really shine in such a really fantastical world. From BRC, I moved on to working more in the theme park space. BRC was very focused on more visitor centers. Of course, it's still considered theme entertainment, but I really wanted to get into theme parks specifically. So I went into as an associate producer with Universal Creative. And I spent a couple of years there, and again, just learning from a small company like BRC and moving on to a space like Universal was a really fantastic experience. Now I'm with the Third Floor. It's a visualization studio over in Los Angeles, working a lot of really cool films and television shows, and of course theme park attractions. I never thought I would kind of make my way more in that world and more in the VFX and previs side, but really all my past times and working in theme entertainment and doing a lot of special events really helped me in my role today with the Third Floor. So it's a little bit about me. I'm sure we'll talk more about our backgrounds individually. And yeah. So I'll pass it on to my girl, Jill.
Hi. What's my background in themed entertainment is what I'm supposed to discuss right now. Well, I am a writer, director, and producer. I most recently produced and wrote the Stephen King adaptation of his book, The Stand, which is pretty relevant because it's about a worldwide plague that kills most of the population, and it aired on CBS All Access, Paramount Plus, during the real life pandemic that we're experiencing right now with COVID-19. So when all that started, all my horror nightmares since childhood, since I was a Stephen King fan and a horror fan from a very early age. I thought all that was coming true, and it was kind of trippy, I guess is the word for it. But luckily, none of that stuff has happened. Instead of 99% of people being killed, it's COVID-19 is far less deadly, and so that's been a wonderful thing. But yeah, that was my most recent producing and writing effort prior to the pandemic. Prior to that, I produced a number of independent films, TV series like Loader Squad, and I've always had a fascination with all things horror and especially themed entertainment. And basically, right now, my focus is how to bridge themed entertainment and TV and movies, because I think that's the forefront of where we're going next. I don't know if you guys do a lot of MX4D or experiential things like that, but yeah, that's where I'm going next. I think that's absolutely the future of entertainment. So themed entertainment is fun. I'm in Orlando, Florida right now, where of course that's the #1 industry here. And Universal Studios. So yeah,
awesome. Yeah, so happy that you guys are here, and like all of us, I don't know if you saw or heard from our introductions that like we all love horror, and so we're all here in the middle of or end of May, but halfway to Halloween, and that's kind of what brought us all together essentially. And I always think it's really interesting how it started off with horror, but it's more than just us loving horror. It's like our Filipino spooky girl network here, where I guess we can just tell the stories of how we met each other first, because that close network is really, at least for me, it was very influential of my interest in getting into entertainment. And that kind of starts off this conversation because, well, I know I met Jill a long time ago because I was 12 years old, 10 years old, 12-year-old on YouTube. She was making some horror film reviews, and I think the first video I saw from her was her video at her vlog at Halloween Horror Nights at some point. And then I was like, oh my gosh, wait, Halloween Horror Nights is a thing? And oh, that looks really cool. And then I was just a fangirl, and I would comment on her stuff at 10 years old. And I even made my own channel inspired by her to review my own review horror films when I didn't know what I was saying, but it was just it was like that. And then I mean we would just chat in the comments, and then I remember her saying it was during Christmas time, she said oh, maligayang Pasko, which is Merry Christmas in Tagalog, and I was like, wait, is she also Filipino? Oh my gosh. And then since then we've just kept in touch. I remember being 18 and I was looking for more experiences. I reached out to Jill asking hey, is there anything that I can get involved with film, entertainment, or horror? And then from there, that's how I met Johanna as well, because she was like, you should volunteer for Midsummer Scream. I was like, that's a great idea, because I love that event. And then yeah, when I met Jojo from there. And then I would like to hear how you guys, how you two met, because y'all are very close.
Joe, how do we meet? I'm not exactly sure either.
Gosh, I actually don't remember the first time we met in person, but I think it was perfect timing when, yes, the internet and social media was skyrocketing, and it was so easy to watch vlogs and meet new people. And I think because the horror community is fairly small, and the theme park community, especially the haunted attraction community, is small, I immediately recognized Jill at different events. And I kind of knew that we were, she's Filipino. I had a feeling,
I'm only half, so I'm kind of a sneaky Filipino. Some people think people usually kind of mistake me for different races, but that's why I kind of targeted both of them, because I knew from your names that you're most likely Filipino, and of course from your beautiful faces. So little exotic flowers.
But I think we kept crossing each other at different events. It was Great Horror Camp Out, Zombie Joe's, Halloween Horror Nights, because you were doing press, I was doing press. And I think over time, we just and kind of had the same circle of friends. We just became really close, and now we're really, really close friends. And see each other in Orlando quite often. So gosh, we're terrible friends, obviously, because we don't remember the moments.
Well, yeah, again, it's like when you meet somebody kind of like in a crowd, it's different from when you finally have like that private conversation. So yeah, it's we don't remember the exact moment.
But again, it's like the industry is so small that it was always like a hello, hey, how's it going? Let's take a picture. So yeah, I guess that's our story. That's our love story.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, how the industry is so small that it is very rare to see sometimes like other people of color in themed entertainment or in the haunt industry. And so when we saw each other, it's like again, oh my gosh, another like Filipino girl who's into like entertainment and into horror. And I remember since I was younger, and I would like ask both Jill and JoJo like questions of just, me trying to get a job or get some experience, just learn from them, like still learning a lot from them. So I'm really glad that we're having this conversation together finally, because it's really important and it's not really talked about as much. Or maybe there are other people out there who are in the same situation, especially since we are all like first generation where our parents immigrated over here. And sometimes that gives a very unique experience for people who are trying to get into the entertainment industry, for sure. And so I wanted to ask you guys how, like, let's bring it back to the very, very beginning of why you wanted to get into entertainment. Like, was there an experience? Was there an attraction or something? Like, what were you feeling? And what made you be like, I want to do this as a job?
You want to go for it, Jill? Or?
No. Ate says go first.
Wait, Jenny has to translate. Okay.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'll go first. I think a big part of the reason why I pursued themed entertainment and Halloween was because I grew up in Southern California. I feel very fortunate to have lived here for so long. I grew up in California, which is where I currently am at. So I was lucky to visit the theme parks every year. Every birthday was a different theme park. And we're surrounded by the best parks. There's Disneyland, there's Knott's, there's Six Flags. You want to drive a little further, it's SeaWorld. So my parents always brought me and brought my cousins, and we always had a great time. So that was really just like an inherent part of my childhood. And then the Halloween side, of course, we're surrounded by the greatest events as well. And it's actually the best saturation of events. Every 2 miles this way, you can find a home haunt, a yard haunt, or a professional haunt. And then every single theme park that I already loved was doing a big Halloween event. So that kind of combination really made me fall in love with the world. And I think in theme parks, and a lot of people can agree with this, it's like you either get the bug or you don't. Like you get the theme park bug and you're like obsessed and you want to go back. And that was me. And my first attraction that made me fall in love with theme parks and the design of it all was Indiana Jones. At Disneyland. And just because I think I was in love with Spielberg and the world of Indiana Jones and the films, Temple of Doom was like the best thing ever and very horror as well. And then it came to life as a theme park attraction. And as a kid, you don't really understand how that works. I was on a Jeep. The world was actually physical and I was completely immersed into my favorite movie. And so that was really a big kind of, I guess, like a light bulb in my head, but like, wow, I want to really pursue this. And I guess the same thing for haunt. My first haunt event was Knott's Scary Farm, and that started it all. And again, very lucky to say that because Knott's really did start it all as kind of like the first major Halloween event in the world. So I went every year, and that kind of made me kind of explore more haunts because I already got over Knott's and wasn't afraid anymore, and I loved it. So that made me explore more attractions. But how I got into it was really, there was no path for me. It was made back then. It wasn't easy to Google how to get into themed entertainment, how to become a designer. How do you get involved with theme parks? Again, my background is not anything specific. Like I'm not an engineer, I'm not a designer, but I wanted to get into it. So it really did just take someone to tell me that you're capable. And that was Randy Ewing from Thinkwell, and he's still with the company. He's working the Beijing side, and he told me you can be a project coordinator, and I was like, what the heck is that? And he said it was the perfect start in theme entertainment. You get your foot in the door. It's fairly entry level. You get to work on all things, on a project, and you're passionate about the industry, and you should pursue it. And I did. So sometimes it takes someone to kind of inspire you and really push you to pursue something. Sometimes it's schooling, but for me, it was more at someone like Randy at his level telling me I can do it was to help me kind of really push forward. And then, like I said, for my Halloween events, that was born out of my work that I did with TPA, or Theme Park Adventure. The events came out of Southern California being the best place in the world as a Halloween city. And there was really no event, celebrating the best place in the world, right? There was horror conventions, but there was really no event celebrating specifically Halloween events in Southern California. So that's why Scarelay was created. And that the same team evolved it into a separate event called Midsummer Scream, but it was the same idea. There needed to be an event to celebrate all these great attractions like Universal, Six Flags, the Home Haunters, and everything Halloween. So I was really proud to be a part of that. But again, the special event background that I have really helped me with my professional career in themed entertainment. That was a little long-winded, I apologize, but that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, don't apologize. I always love hearing your story because
my path is like, there's Halloween.
And everybody's path's like that. There's no straight path unless you're going into medicine or something like that. In entertainment, it's always like a winding path.
Sure.
And that's why we're like on the show to talk about that, especially like with this perspective of living in an Asian household, which we will get into later. But for Jill, like how was what got you
into entertainment in general? I always loved movies and TV. I always thought I wanted to do that for a living, but at the same time, that's one of those things where people tell you it's like a silly dream. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, prior to it being like the film capital that it is now. And then during high school, I moved to Orlando and saw that really Orlando was very much a theme park industry town, during the pandemic, all the theme parks opened as soon as possible because it's such a big part of the economy here that if the theme parks close, well, now the hotels are empty and the restaurants are empty and then nobody has a job. You know what I mean? So it's like you can't stop gambling in Vegas and you can't stop theme parks in Orlando. Otherwise there's just, it's an economic driver, So moving here, that really taught me a lot about this, you can really, it runs the entire town. It's an industry to have theme parks, And nonetheless, I moved out to Los Angeles, didn't really have too many contacts out there. I started out as a commercial actor. I worked my way up as an assistant, as an editor, doing every possible job I could to get into writing and producing and directing. I did a lot of reality TV and I wrote for the news. I copywrote for commercials. I produced commercials. I did so many different things, just learning and, like I said, a very crooked path. And I've always been fascinated with theme parks because as in Atlanta, you have Six Flags, which is mostly roller coasters and a little bit of what's it called? More like attractions. And they always had a spooky Halloween. And then in Orlando, when I was in high school, I started going to Universal Halloween Horror Nights, and I thought it was the best thing I'd ever seen. And once I moved to LA, I couldn't believe how many haunted attractions, Halloween events there were. It was just as Johanna said, it's Southern California is kind of like Halloween heaven, it's a major event every Halloween. And so I got really into it. And then slowly, as social media really started to blossom between YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram, I started making spooky haunt and horror friends as opposed to being everybody's one friend that was in this stuff with not many, everybody was like, oh, we'll go with Jill to our Halloween events. Wow, Jill's still really about this the rest of the year. Calm down, But then finding that wow, there are things like Monsterpalooza in spring and, Midsummer Scream in the summer, finding out that there's people who do this all the time. It's super exciting. And again, I think it's one of those things where it's the the enjoyment of themed entertainment is becoming more and more of a worldwide thing. Halloween and horror is like big internationally, and it's only getting bigger. I think we're in a real growth industry, and I think it's super fun. It's just like a fun, healthy way of dealing with your fears and bonding with your friends and sharing an event and, you know, celebrating birthdays and everything that's good and fun about life. And you know what I mean? Like, what's more fun than being scared and surviving it, you know? And like, together, like, me and Johanna went to the scariest haunt we've ever been to during the pandemic in Atlanta. We went to Netherworld, and we were genuinely terrified because, you know, it was hard to tell at that point how dangerous or crazy it was for us to go into a public event. And then we're also in a really, really great haunt with some of the best animatronics and displays I've ever seen, and great scare actors. And it was just, wow, like, what a bonding experience we had.
Yeah, we were straight up cuddling. Like,
yeah, it was Scooby-Doo and Shaggy time, where it's just like, oh my God! It was genuinely like, we didn't actually carry each other, but we almost did. There was cowering like this. There was a lot of cowering like that. So again, like, these are great bonding experiences. It's fun to be scared and not actually be harmed in any way. So that's what we want to do for a living, apparently.
Yeah, and then like, it's interesting because like when you explain this kind of thing to other people, they'll always be like why are you into horror so much, or like something like that. And it's exactly that. It's just so fun, and somehow there is a way to like work with that, like work in that environment, whether it's year round or whatnot. Like, there's a way to pay you what you love there, and that is something though that it's like pretty, I guess, a little challenging to explain though to your own like family, especially if you are first generation and your family's from another country. So, you know, like our Filipino parents, as we talked about sometimes, like going through, there's no path, but our parents kind of wanted us to have a certain path, at least starting with education, because they like work really hard and they wanted us to at least get a degree in something. Hopefully that will get us a job that has a lot of stability. But we chose entertainment, something that's always changing, but it's worth it. And it's just, you find yourself sometimes still like always just trying to re-explain what you do and why you want to do it, and that you'll be okay. Like it's rough, but like starting especially with school, as soon as you choose something that's not STEM or business or something pre-law, that's when a lot of questions of like, what does that do? Or like, how much money does that make? What jobs can you get with that? And you're like, oh my gosh, Tita, like, like, it's fine. It's fine. But I would love to kind of delve into that, where like our parents' reactions personally to whether you decided to not go that traditional path in school and get a degree, or get a degree that just wasn't in that typical STEM or pre-law kind of thing. Because I know when I first said I wanted to do film, they were like, okay, you're going to be a director. You're going to win all the Oscar awards. Wow. They were still supportive in it. But they were kind of giving that pressure that the only thing they knew about like the film industry was kind of what they see on the awards. And I was like, but that's not, especially with horror films, like, oh my gosh, that's really like, oh, that's a lot of pressure.
Really, when the Oscars like swept them, it's like, it doesn't happen that often.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's all they knew when it was on TV, and they were like, oh, you can make these in the Philippines. And I was like, that's hard, but it's not possible. and then now transitioning outside of film and going to themed entertainment, and it's the both entertainment in general and horror specifically. Oh my gosh, those are like even more reactions from my family. It's like, as our friends alone would be like, oh, like they're into horror year round, like that's crazy, they're still into it. And imagine from your parents, oh my goodness, when like personally, yeah, they would like, when you express that interest even more, when it's just outside of Halloween, that's when they raise questions of like, are you okay? Like, or you wear black lipstick and they think you're a devil worshiper. Like, oh my goodness. But yeah, I was wondering, like, if you guys had that same experience as well, like either when you're growing up or even continue to still feel that as you're like established in the industry already.
Okay, is Ate telling me to go first again?
Yeah.
Either way.
Go ahead in Tagalog.
Okay. Yes and yes and yes. I agree with everything you said, Jenny. When I started at BRC, it was right when I finished community college. So fortunately, my parents supported me in going to community college first because I was still figuring out what to do. Again, that I had really no clear path on how to get into entertainment, although that was always in the back of my mind. But when it all happened, it was right at the tail end of finishing school. So I jumped right into a career, and that was very difficult for my parents to understand. You know, the question always came up, are you going back to school? This job is great, but are you going back to school? Because technically that part of my life wasn't finished, right? And then when you try to explain the work you do at BRC, again, not a lot of people know design firms outside of Imagineering Universal Creative was also tough for them to understand. But it was really the best thing I could have done because I dove right into experience. And I think a lot of us struggle with that side of getting, for education or getting your career path was experience matters a lot. And of course, education is very important, but experience is probably, arguably as important or more important because that's when you can dive into projects and meet new people. And that's what I did. And I haven't looked back. So explaining what I did at BRC was really hard, but how my parents understood what I did was name dropping the projects we've done. So the best I could have done is say, oh yeah, BRC worked on the Heineken experience. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, the Heineken experience. Or the Mystery Lodge. Remember the Mystery Lodge at Knott's Berry Farm? Yeah, BRC produced that. But they still had a hard time, like, why didn't Knott's design it and why did BRC design it? Like that kind of like, how do they cross? And it's like, well, Knott's hired BRC to design. Anyway, but when I moved to Universal, that changed everything. Little Hannah was actually working on a known theme park, in the world. I was on a producer level, so that title was a little bit more kind of, everyone understood what a producer meant, but it was, again, attached to something familiar. So that excitement was a lot more visible than what I've done in the past. And now with the third floor, I work on a lot of, the company has been working on fantastic shows for 15 years, all the blockbusters you can name, all the shows that you probably love today. So they get excited about that fact, but still don't know what I do because I'm in business development. But once in a while, yes, the question does come up, Hannah, are you going back to school? I'm like, I'm knee deep into entertainment 10 years later. It's like, personally, I don't want to go back. I want to keep getting the experience and meeting new people, learning new projects and starting a new projects. That's a personal thing, but that's kind of my side. It's education has always been very important. And my mom's an accountant. That's very.
Oh my God! Now that you put it that way, my mom was an accountant too. She started as a lawyer, but she became an accountant. Is that another thing we have in common?
Ooh.
There's something about Filipinos where they're always pinching pennies and accounting for everything. There's something there. I'm like drawing a circle here. It's like, okay.
The double whammy about being as the stereotype Filipino. My mom works as an accountant at Kaiser Permanente.
Okay.
Medical accountant. It's over.
There we go. I was going to say, my mom's not an accountant, but she did work for Kaiser for a little bit and she does health insurance claims. So
yeah.
There
and
you
then
go.
I forgot to mention my dad. My dad is a business guy, total business guy, but really focused on sales and real estate. So very, a lot of Filipino, especially that generation, men go into business, a lot of sales. So here I am going, and it's a complete different direction. And I'm like, hi.
Oh, yeah. Especially when you have siblings too, where like my older sibling, they're like, oh, and then they saw she was into psychology. So it's like, oh, like a therapist or something. She's like, yeah, sort of. And then she went into marketing. So still kind of in the business side too. And then for me, they're like, what do you want to do? I want to like work on theme parks and haunted houses.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I feel like we're getting to a point where nobody's going to really understand anyone's job pretty soon. It's not as simple as like doctor, lawyer, nurse, you know, it's like, it's getting to the point where it's like, oh, I'm a coder for this company. I do an OnlyFans and I'm consulting as a therapist. You know what I mean? Like everybody has about 6 jobs and 7 side hustles. And, you know, it's just, that's the way the world works. It's just, and like when I think about like trying to explain it truly is trying to explain to your parents, but then I started thinking about like, wow, if I had to explain what I do to my grandparents, like they would understand. She works on TV shows. That's still a familiar word. Like sometimes when I'm explaining my jobs to people, and then I try to explain like, oh, we're on a streaming service, and like sometimes I can see that that's like a blank stare, you know. And it's like yesterday, my tita and tito were here, and they said, oh, your show The Stand, is it on Netflix? And I'm like, it's not. I'm sorry, I'm actually Filipino, so pardon me making light of the accent, but it's like, it's on a Netflix, and they're like, so we can watch it on Netflix. No, it's actually going to cost $5.99, and I can install it for you and give it to you. And it's just like, it's very, and I'm like, it'll be on Netflix in a year. But again, it's the complexities of how you find something in this current time, how you explain to your family what you're doing. And like, I literally have to install streaming services on my family's TVs and like switch over the HDMI myself because they're just still used to cable, or it's not running fast enough. It just, the world is changing very quickly, and we all have to be adaptable. So to me, it's like, go after your dreams, try to do whatever you really want to do, because, you know, it's school is great. We all should learn all the time, but it's like, it's a constant process of learning. Like graduating doesn't mean like, oh, I'm done learning now. No, you're going to keep on learning your entire life, having to keep up with everything. It's like, if I was just a writer right now, it's like, no, I have to be on top of so many different things. I have to be able to edit and direct my presentations. I have to be able to like use all these different apps to show what I think. It's like, there's no one thing that you learn and you're done anymore. That's just not the way the world works. So being adaptable, I think, is really key.
It really is. And I think it's different now, at least within education, because there are more programs and more like majors towards entertainment now. Like it's wild. And then there are more internship opportunities. So it's really great, like this abundance of resources, but it's also like the competitiveness is a huge factor now, or the impactiveness. Like it's, everyone wants a internship at Universal or Disney nowadays. And it goes back to what Johanna or Jojo said about earlier. It's about your experience. Whether you're at a huge like title with like Universal internship or something smaller, like it's a small community anyways, at least themed entertainment and like haunt. Yes. So it's not, I like how even if you're at a big name or small name, like everyone's still interacted with each other. So everyone has an understanding in that industry once you meet at least like that one person to get into it. And then you're like, wow, it's very comforting. Whether sometimes it's like people name drop and you're like, I don't know who that is. Like, oh, should I know them?
Real quick on internships, definitely doesn't matter if you're in a big company like Universal or Imagineering, or a small company like a smaller company like a Thinkwell. Every project is structured differently. Every company is structured differently. You're going to learn 20 more things every day the minute you move to a new internship or a job. Nothing is the same. So it doesn't, I always say, don't just shoot for the big ones, shoot for the smaller ones as well. It's always great to have a goal, but you're going to learn something new and different that's going to help you no matter what order you go, whether it's Universal first and then you go to other design companies or the opposite. It's all great experience.
And what's great,
put your foot in the door, get your foot in the door somewhere, you know, it's like, that's really it. It's like, you have to just start somewhere, wherever it is. And it's like, know where you want to go and keep on trying to go in that direction, you know, and know where you don't want to go and don't go there.
Yes. I'm gonna say, get your foot in the door, but how much are you going to make?
Again, it's like, it's all a process of learning and figuring out how to do your passion project and keep your bills paid at the same time. It's like, life is very complicated.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But sometimes, like, I think when you are working on projects in entertainment and you finally get to show that product or show that experience with your parents, it's kind of nice seeing their reactions of finally kind of either like they're expressing their support just by being there and not like telling you off, and then, or like they're just genuinely excited about it, or even better, you see that they're understanding. Because I remember, well, my first experience was working in like being a scare actor for a haunted house. So you can imagine like the first, like me going out late at night, and then my parents already was worried of like, how much does that pay? Or like, are you safe? Blah, blah, blah. Because they really thought I was out here doing some satanic rituals, like in a mask. But when I brought them out to the first haunted house, my mother was like cursing at the guy like behind my dad. And my dad was just laughing because he knows it's all pretend. And then my like sister's screaming and all, and it was so fun. And then once they got to like even meet like my boss and stuff, they're kind of understanding like, oh yeah, it's still like a production. There's structure to it. It's not just like we're all free for all and we're out here being wild and we get paid for it. Like it's pretty interesting. Like, so it's, especially with horror, it's just so fun. But there is a process to it. To like, that's very similar with any other entertainment project. So it should not be undervalued or like as less professional or anything.
For sure. I mean, I think, imagine like if you're a parent and your kid says, oh, I'm working on a Halloween convention. Like you'd be like, what the heck does that mean? Jerry making money? How big is it? Where is it going to be? So like telling my parents I'm working on this event called Scare LA or like Midsummer Scream, that was very hard for them to understand. But then my mom finally saw it. I think Jill, you saw her there. And I think it was maybe the first year, second year, and we had thousands of people. And she finally saw scale and how serious this event was, and she was super happy. But you're right, like just to have them sharing that experience with your parents does allow for that deeper understanding and sharing that passion. And yeah, she had a good time, and she had VIP tickets, so she was very happy about VIP tickets from home. Unfortunately, I haven't seen the other projects I've worked on, and others I can't talk about. But
yeah, and it'd be like that in entertainment, sadly.
Yeah,
that's the reality of it. But there is like, again, showing what's it called? It's very fortunate though, specifically as Filipinos, and you know, like at least our parents are eventually they get accepting and support us in our like avenues into horror. But like other families aren't like that as understanding, and I think like especially with other Filipinos, it's like if most of them are conservatively Catholic, then they have a huge concern with it. And in general, like I wasn't raised in what's it called, with my family liking horror and Halloween as other people in the haunt industry, where they're like, I've been trick-or-treating since I was like 5 years old. I was like, I haven't been trick-or-treating for the first time until like 17.
Wow.
And so I know I was late to the game. I was really late to it. But the closest thing is like my family saying like, oh, Aswang's gonna get you if you behave this way, like you're gonna be bad. But that's it. They didn't even explain like what Aswang is, and which we're gonna actually delve deeper into it, because I know Jill's working on a project regarding like Aswang, and I actually like helped do some research like a long time ago, which helped me learn a lot about like Filipino folklore and monsters. Like I'm so happy I got like you had me do that, because it was just so interesting. Me like 17, 18 years old making my first website, and it was just like researching all of the different monsters in Filipino folklore, like Aswang, Manananggal. There's like a bunch of other ones, but those are the main ones. But I wanted to hear like Jill, your thoughts on what's it called, on the projects that you're working on regarding that, because I know you were in the Philippines a while ago. So.
Yeah, I was in the Philippines prepping a movie prior to the pandemic, and right now that's on hold because the Philippines is still on a fairly strong lockdown, and it would be a lot of quarantining for me to go back and forth. So I was there right up until the pandemic really started to go worldwide in March of 2020. I came back to Los Angeles, and I was there for most of the pandemic. But yeah, I've been very interested in folklore worldwide because it's really interesting how over and over again in so many different cultures, and I don't know if this spreads sort of worldwide just through actual word of mouth folklore, or the scarier possibility is that there really are vampires and witches and, you know, all these monsters that come back over and over in all these different cultures. Like right now I'm working on a show for Amazon India that's also a folklore show. And again, it's surprising how much crossover there is between everybody with like witches, demons, like it's just interesting how every single culture has that. And then especially in the Philippines, a lot of the folklore was sort of used by the Spanish to control and scare the locals, to keep them from doing things, to keep them in the village. They'd say something like, oh, don't go into the woods at night, the capri will get you, which is like a giant in the trees, you know what I mean? Or the manananggal, which is sucking it's a vampire with a super long tongue that sucks out babies out of women's wombs. So it's like, again, was that just a way of coping with the tragedies of life, where it's like, oh, maybe somebody lost a baby or had a stillborn, and it's like, was it the manananggal? You know, it's interesting, all this folklore that spread. But yeah, that's been a long-term interest of mine, and so I'm basically working on a Filipino horror story type of series. But yeah, that's one of my more long-term projects that was more in the forefront prior to the pandemic. But again, timelines have been skewed because of all that kind of stuff. But luckily, I'll plug something that we didn't work on at all. There's a Filipino series called Trace that's all about Filipino folklore that's coming, an anime series that's coming to not Amazon, to Netflix fairly soon. So that'll be cool. But yeah, it's our folklore is really fascinating. How everybody hears about Aswang, but even though, like, personally, I don't speak very good Tagalog. I don't know how well you guys speak Tagalog, but, you know, meanwhile, the folklore sort of trickles down. Like, I didn't really hear about it too much growing up, but most of my family knew about it.
Yeah. And that's kind of like, at least from what I know, the extent of at least typical Filipinos families' knowledge of the folklore, unless they're super into it. But then I know, like, that's about their attitudes towards it. It's not like, oh, we love it, it's super interesting. Like, they don't even celebrate really like Halloween. It's more of the religious aspect of, like, for Souls Day, to celebrate the spirits and stuff. But yeah, but that's about it. And then I know, though, like Jill was talking about in our production meeting earlier, that she has some theory towards, like, Filipinos and their attitudes of horror. And I think it's a good time to have the big reveal for that, Jill.
You know, again, I was just like, well, I don't want to spoiler it while we're just talking amongst ourselves. Cause I can't, I'm not one of those people who remembers exactly what I said. But anyway, I don't know, because again, I sort of consider to myself, like, why is Joe, like, when meeting somebody like Johanna, where it's like, wow, we have so many things in common, but we're sort of, you know, we at the same time, like, there's not too many spooky girls, but then I keep on meeting Filipino-American women who are really into horror, as you yourself are, Jenny. And I just kept on wondering, why is this? And I really think it's something about Filipino culture in general, because they've been colonized so many times and went through World War II and all the unpredictability and uncertainty of life. It's like, how do you cope with it? It's like sort of it's like this, like, inborn fear. And so I don't know about you guys, but I was raised to always be afraid of, oh my God, you're going to get in a car accident. Oh my God, you're going to break a bone. Like, you know, don't ride a bike, you'll break a bone. Don't go outside, there's kidnappers there. You know what I mean? It's like you're constantly, like, the world is like, oh my God, look out. Like, there's something behind every bush, every corner.
So true.
And so it's something like even the first time I was going to the Philippines as sort of an adult, my mom was like, oh my God, they will pickpocket you there, and they will throw a baby into your hands, and you will catch the baby, and they'll take your wallet and your purse. You know what I mean? Like, and this is like her own people she's saying this about. And it's just like, well, then I went there and I was like, okay, most people are nice, but at the same time, in the Philippines, everybody wears their backpack in the front because they're so terrified of being ripped off. Or it's like, everybody had a story about how, like, they're on the bus or the subway there and somebody's, like, stealing their wallet or their phone. It's just like, it really is like you got to be alert all the time society. And it's like, it's sort of a microcosm of humanity, because you have so many people crowded on this one island that's been through so much, whether it's the Spanish colonization, World War II, the Marcos, like, administration ripping off the people, and Duterte. Like, it's just like there's always something new and kind of like volatile to deal with. And so we were raised in America, and we, it's a bit more stable here. There's more room for people to spread out, and it's like, we're in the most prosperous country in the world. We're living the American dream, but again, like, we're experiencing the American reality, which isn't quite the American dream. But at the same time, we have enough money for entertainment. We have enough money that theme parks are thriving, and there is when you're not in complete poverty and war, you can have some entertainment. So it's like going and to these theme parks is like a coping mechanism and a way of like, having something nice in life to look forward to.
Honestly.
But yeah, that's my sort of concept, that like we all are sort of, everybody who's interested in haunts and Halloween and horror, we're all sort of coping with the unpredictability of life. We're all sort of like, trying to figure out how to deal with our anxiety, our fear, all these things. And it's like going through these haunts and these horror experiences sort of prepare us for things, for how to cope with life, That's the beginning of my theory. That's a sneak preview of my TED Talk.
No, I love that. Cool. Yeah, and like we said, when you're going through the horror, like haunted houses specifically, it's like feeling all of those and coping with it, but in a safe, controlled environment for the most part, unless you're going to that one during COVID where it's another level of fear.
Yeah, so again, you never know how far to push it. Like, I remember I was at a haunt and somebody started pushing up against me. I started smushing up against the wall, and I was like, oh man, like, I didn't see this part of the haunt coming. It's like, there's some haunts where it's like it's very guardrails and you see the exit signs everywhere, and there's other ones where it's like, okay, what am I in for today?
Oh my gosh. Honestly. Yeah. And then I do see a couple of questions actually popping up, which is really great. And as we're almost towards the end of the conversation, I think it's a great time to bring these, where especially this last one over here, for someone asked, how can you get your foot in the door without your labor being taken advantage of? Which I think is a great question, because sometimes that's really hard to figure out, especially in entertainment. Some people will put in everything to get their foot in the door, but not really know how to establish their boundaries yet. Or like they said, they do get taken advantage of, sadly. So, yeah.
That's an ongoing question. I mean, genuinely, it's like, get your contracts right, know your personal things that you're uncomfortable with. It's like, this is the great thing about, like, we live in the post-Me Too era, where it's like, we know that predatory people will take advantage of somebody wanting to get into a career or wanting to advance themselves or learn something. It's like, when you feel uncomfortable with a situation, question whether it's right, talk to some friends, like, know your personal boundaries, know what you think is morally wrong. I want to live a morally sound life. I don't want to hurt anybody. I want to have a good life. And so anytime I feel like I'm in a situation where I'm like, they're taking advantage of people, like, I'm not comfortable with this, I find another way to pay my bills and find another job.
I definitely echo the contract part, whether that's free work or volunteer work or paid work. It kind of established a professionalism and helps, guide expectations for however long the gig is. Kind of protects yourself, and it protects whoever you're working with. I also, someone told me this too, it's a good recommendation in life, was be your own boss sometimes. It's like, if you want to try something new, it's surround yourself with great partners and the right people you want to do business with, whether or not it's profitable or it's a fun hobby or it's an event that's free. Surround yourself with great partnerships, because that can evolve into something more or real, or something into more of a professional project or a paid project. It's always a good start to kind of partner with your trustworthy friends or family. And then there's also that line of, and I understand how difficult this is internship or volunteer work versus paid. And the paid part does give you a little bit more credibility, or the company a little bit more credibility of being responsible. So you always have to just do your own homework and investigate whoever this company is or whoever you're trying to do business with. You know, what's their reputation like? Talk to other people who's worked for this company, and just kind of do your own little detective work. It's very important. There's nothing wrong with that, no matter how deep you go. It's okay to do your little background check. But there is accountability when it is paid work versus free work. I hate using that word free work, but it exists.
Oh yeah, for sure. Especially when you're starting off as students, like you said, they want to get in, like anything they can to get in the foot in the door, and as many experiences they want. But sometimes you can start like spreading yourself too thin. And like I experienced that too, like especially in a pandemic. Oh my goodness, there's so much energy that someone can take as being a full-time student and like having another like a part-time job, and then still also doing volunteer work and just having your own life outside of all of that. And I think one of the things that I learned was just to learn how to say no. And like just because you say no, like it doesn't mean that you're not showing interest in like, oh, I just don't want to work with you anymore. It's just sometimes there are different ways to articulate that, so you're not getting taken advantage of, or like you're not like spreading yourself too thin. You'd be like I really appreciate this. What if there's like a great offer, and like sometimes there are people with those mentalities of like saying yes because it's an offer and it's very beneficial. But again, you have to know your boundaries and know yourself and how realistically you can take that on. And there will be so many other opportunities coming afterwards. And especially you're like, again, you saying no is not you cutting off that relationship. So you can just be like, I appreciate this offer. Mm-hmm. And like, but I don't feel like I have the capacity to work on this right now, or that I have the abilities to work on this at this moment. But I'm like, of course, I would like to learn more about it later, or something like that along those lines. You don't have to
that's communication. So if you are in a position where you're volunteering and you feel like you're drowning in work, I'm sure you've done, your homework, and that you've trusted these people you're working with to understand. Mm-hmm. And it's a two-way street. It's like, yeah, she's busy, and that's totally cool. And you're telling them too, I'm busy. Is that totally cool? So definitely open communication.
Yeah. Communication is key in every aspect of life. So be clear about what you want. Be clear about just be clear about what you want. That always speak up.
For sure. And then just as like, again, we were wrapping up this conversation, and I wanted to ask if there's anything else, like any other piece of advice, especially for those out there who are either first generation students or first generation in general, where maybe they're trying to start a path into entertainment, but don't know where to start. Whether it's, do they go to school? Do they start a job? Who do they like? What resources do they look at? Anything? If you have pieces of advice for the audience out there who are having those feelings right now, especially when there's a pandemic and they feel like everything's on hold. There's nothing going on, and then theme parks are opening up. So will I even be able to get a job, or someone else will get it? Those thoughts.
Well, a good start is to watch the show, because every week there's always fantastic panelists and insights and knowledge from all ranges of entertainment. Again, like Jill, you've dabbled in theater entertainment as well, but you're a rising star in film and TV, and that's amazing. That's great, just great knowledge for someone to learn about. So that's a great start. And definitely, especially during it's such a big deal. Reaching out to people, cold emailing is totally fine. Social media, that thing, like reach out to people and just learn about what they do in their backgrounds. That's always number one. It's network. Get to know people and what they do, and you make friends, because that's going to benefit you down the road, whether that's in 2 months or 3 years. You've kind of, establishing that really great relationship is really important. My biggest second advice, and I think the pandemic has said this, has proved this, for me, especially personally, is expand your experience. I know it's a dream and a goal to get into theater entertainment specifically, but that's, sometimes that's not the case, at all times. There's not, going into a version of a vertical of entertainment is totally okay, because all those skill sets are going to apply to that dream job you want in theater entertainment. I mean, I did not think I would be working more in film and television, working in visualization. But my past experience has brought me to the third floor, right? It's all kind of, it worked out in this kind of, surprising way. So don't, if it's like maybe an interactive gig, maybe it's more technology driven, maybe it's a little bit more engineering driven, that's okay. That's still a great experience. And you know what? Companies love people who are Swiss Army knives.
Definitely.
Yeah, different skill sets, different, education or knowledge. That is very, super valuable. And a great, you'd be a great applicant for companies. So I guess those are my top two. And also the last one, though, it's not really a tip, but stay true to yourself and be a fan. It's okay to go to theme parks every day. It's okay to watch YouTube videos for 18 hours about, horror and entertainment. Stay true to yourself, and it's okay to be a fan. Flaunt it, love it. There's nothing bad about being a fan. Just don't be creepy about it, but it's okay to be a fan.
Yes.
I guess my advice, because, I thought of myself as, I'm a writer. I just have to be a good enough writer. And, I can be very, very quiet and just turn in my piece of paper, and like people read my piece of paper and then they'll understand everything. It's not quite that easy. Like I wasted a lot of time being very, very shy. I didn't, when people asked me what I did, I'd just be like, I could barely even announce myself as a writer or somebody wanted to be a director or producer. I tell everybody what you want to do. Follow, like Jenny, you asked me, what do I do? How do I get into this? I said, I don't know, Midsummer Scream, try them. You know what I mean? You never know who's going to have a piece of advice. Like I've gotten to the point where it's like, if somebody at the gas station tells me, you should try this, I'll consider it. Before I'd be like, what, who's giving me advice now? I'm open to anything, I'll follow any leads. Especially after the pandemic, it's like, who even knows right now? Like the whole world and the whole industry has changed so much. I take advice from everyone. So don't think that you're not good enough, because you'll get good enough along the way. And it's like, who's to say who's good enough? The world is such a big place. There's so many different people. It's like, some people will talk about like, I don't even like Disney World. I don't even like Steven Spielberg. So it's like, if you cannot like the biggest world changing things, then there's room for everyone in the world. It's just try to find your path, like believe in yourself and go after what you want to go after. And anybody who tells you can't do it, prove them wrong, because there's, what I mean? Like, it's like persistence pays off. So yeah, believe in yourself, just stay true to your path. But again, be open-minded to what other people might say. It's like, take advice from anyone. There was times where I was too stubborn and I was too shy. I stopped doing either of those things, and I found all kinds of great advice and paths I could take. And you never know. So that's my advice.
Good advice.
It is really great advice. Like, I needed to hear that myself, but I cannot echo that. Like, each of yours is a piece of advice enough, because like literally that's what sometimes like validates my decisions into navigating this industry. So again, like, I'm really glad that I'm hearing this myself. I'm glad that you're saying this for everyone out in the audience. But yeah, thank you so much again, Jill and JoJo. I'm so happy that we're all like, we need to hang out again after this.
I know. We can all hang out now that we're safely allowed to clear to hang out with people again. So once we're all in the same city, we will certainly hang out in person.
Wait, we didn't note that, because I live in Orlando, Florida, and I'm visiting LA in my mom's apartment. So I'm actually streaming from my mom's apartment. And Jill, you're in Orlando.
I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm currently visiting Orlando and streaming from my dad's house. So it's
and we happen to be doing the show. So that's kind of funny. Fate or destiny, whatever you call it. Also, my mom's by.
Yeah, we're dealing with parental Wi-Fi. We're adapting as best we can to everything, and that's all you can do in life.
Yeah, that's how it be on an online show. Oh my gosh. But yeah, again, it was so great to have you guys.
No, thank you.
Oh my God.
Us. Like, I'm so proud of both of you. Like, for those of you who aren't familiar with Filipino terminology, I'm ate. I'm the eldest one here, and so I'm proud of you two.
Oh my gosh, that definitely for the lingo, like that makes me the bunso just because I'm the baby. I'm definitely the youngest one over here, and it's just
except you can, which freaks me out.
I know, right? I swear, when you guys saw me, or when Jill saw me, I was very, very small.
She was 12. She was a baby girl.
I know.
Adults.
That's so wild.
It is.
But soon we'll hang out for a drink or some experience. But till the meantime,
yes, let's go to a haunt or a theme park soon.
Please.
Yes,
but for sure. So thank you for being on the show. I'd like to thank everyone here also watching right now. We got like quite a few numbers and like the engagement on the comments. Like I really appreciate that. And as we're wrapping up, to everyone out there, again, don't forget to follow us on social media and follow them too in their work because it's really amazing. So you guys can plug your social media. It's also in our descriptions, like for this show too. Follow all of us on LinkedIn if you ever have any questions as well. And yeah, we are still continuing API Heritage Month. So tune in next week on the Untitled Show and all of our other shows too, and check that out. So again, thank you everyone on here. And I think that's
How do you say good night?